The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. There's a reason you feel uneasy around certain people, even when they say all the right things. There's a reason you've been betrayed by those who swore loyalty, by those who promised you the world, by those who looked you in the eyes and lied without hesitation. You were watching their words. You should have been watching something else. Carl Jung spent decades descending into the depths of the human psyche, and what he discovered there was haunting. What he found was a truth most people spend their entire lives running from. Most people don't know themselves at all. They live their entire existence performing a character, believing their own act, convinced of their own goodness, while something darker, something ancient, something entirely unconscious pulls the strings from the depths they refuse to explore. Jung called it the shadow, the part of ourselves we bury, the part we deny, the part we project onto others so we don't have to look at it in ourselves. And here's the truth that will change everything. The shadow always reveals itself, always. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for the right moment. It simply emerges when the conditions are right. You just need to know when to look. The mask slips in two specific moments, two windows into the soul that cannot lie. And once you learn to recognize them, once you truly understand what you're seeing, you'll never be fooled again. You'll see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. How many versions of yourself exist? There's the version you show at work, competent, professional, agreeable. There's the version with your family, perhaps softer, or maybe harder, maybe more vulnerable, or maybe more defended. There's the version you perform on social media, curated, filtered, the highlight reel of a life that exists only in carefully composed images. There's the version you show strangers, polite, distant, safe. And then there's the version that exists when you're alone, when no one is watching, when there's no audience to perform for, when the lights go down and the stage is empty. Which one is real? Jung called this the persona, your social mask, the carefully constructed image you present to navigate a world that rewards conformity and punishes authenticity. The armor you wear to protect yourself from a society that demands you be something other than what you are. And here's what you need to understand. The persona isn't evil. It's necessary. We all need it to function, to adapt, to survive in a world of social hierarchies and unspoken rules and brutal judgment. But here's where it becomes dangerous. Here's where it becomes a trap. Here's where people lose themselves entirely. When someone identifies completely with their mask, when they've worn it for so long that they've forgotten it's a mask at all, when they believe the performance is reality, that's when the shadow grows monstrous. That's when the darkness accumulates in the depths, growing denser, growing heavier, growing more volatile with every year they refuse to acknowledge it. That's when you need to watch carefully, because what they've buried is still alive, and it's hungry. The first moment the mask slips is brutal in its simplicity. Watch someone when their world is falling apart, when they're late and nothing is going right, when they're frustrated and their control is dissolving, when they're overwhelmed and the carefully maintained order of their life is crumbling, when they're afraid and there's nowhere to hide from what they've been running from. This is when you see who they really are. This is when the performance ends. Because stress doesn't just make us uncomfortable. Stress bypasses the conscious mind entirely. It activates the most primitive parts of our brain, the parts that existed long before language, long before civilization, long before we learned to smile when we don't mean it. Stress reveals our automatic patterns, the ones we built over a lifetime of pain and fear and survival. The ones we've never examined because examining them would mean confronting what we've become. Watch them carefully. Notice what happens when their flight gets canceled and they're going to miss something important. Notice what emerges when they don't get the promotion they were promised. Notice the transformation when someone cuts them off in traffic and their rage has nowhere to go. Notice who they become when a project fails and someone needs to be blamed. Notice the mask falling when they're criticized in public and their ego is wounded. Do they blame others? Do they find someone, anyone, to make responsible for their suffering? Or do they look inward and take responsibility for their part in what happened? Do they lash out? Do they wound whoever is closest, whoever is most vulnerable, whoever can't fight back? Or do they maintain composure even as the storm rages inside them? Do they abandon their principles the moment it becomes inconvenient? Do their values evaporate when following them requires sacrifice? Or do they hold steady even when it costs them everything? Here's the brutal truth Jung understood. A person with an integrated shadow, someone who has done the excruciating inner work to acknowledge their darkness, to sit with their capacity for cruelty and cowardice and selfishness, doesn't fall apart under pressure. They've already met their demons. They've already looked into the abyss of their own nature. They know what they're capable of, and they've made peace with it. They've integrated it. They've accepted that they contain both light and darkness, and they've learned to work with both. But someone living entirely in their persona, someone who's never examined their shadow, someone who's convinced themselves they're only good, only noble, only righteous, they become unrecognizable when the pressure's on. They become something else entirely. They become what they've been denying for so long. Jung warned us with words that still echo. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Let me translate that for you. The more someone denies their darkness, the more someone insists they don't have a shadow, the more someone projects all evil onto others while seeing only purity in themselves, the more violently that shadow erupts when it finally breaks through. And it always breaks through. Always. The mask doesn't crack, it shatters. The second moment the mask slips is perhaps even more revealing, perhaps even more brutal in what it exposes. Watch how someone treats those who can do absolutely nothing for them. Pay attention, really pay attention. How do they speak to the waiter who's serving their food? How do they treat the janitor cleaning the building where they work? How do they interact with the customer service representative on the phone who's just trying to solve their problem? How do they respond to the homeless person asking for help on the corner they pass every day? How do they look at anyone they perceive as beneath them in the brutal hierarchy we call society? Because here's what Jung understood about human nature, about the performance we put on, about the game we all play. When there's no audience, when there's no reward, when there's no social capital to be gained, when there's no expectation of anything in return, the persona has no reason to perform. The mask becomes heavy. It becomes exhausting. And for just a moment, they let it slip. Think about what this really means. When someone is kind to their boss, are they kind or are they strategic? Are they compassionate or are they ambitious? When someone is charming to those who can advance their career, those who hold power over their future, those who control resources they want, is that authenticity or is that manipulation wearing a smile? When someone shows respect only to those who can harm or help them, is that respect or is that fear and desire dressed up as virtue? But when someone treats the person who cleans their office with the same dignity they show the CEO, when someone helps a stranger who will never know their name and can never repay the favor, when someone shows genuine compassion to those who society has deemed worthless, invisible, less than human, that's when you're seeing their soul. That's when you're seeing past the strategy and into the truth. Jung believed, and he was right, that true character reveals itself in the absence of witnesses and rewards. It's the behavior that serves no social function, offers no advantage, brings no applause, earns no points in the game everyone else is playing. It's who you are when being good doesn't benefit you at all. When kindness costs you something. When compassion requires you to sacrifice your comfort. When integrity means losing something you want. That's the test. That's the revelation. These two moments are powerful. These two windows into the human soul matter for three interconnected reasons that Jung spent his life teaching. First, they bypass conscious control completely. In moments of stress or in interactions with people we deem insignificant, our automatic patterns emerge before our conscious mind can edit them. The persona can't keep up the performance. The mask doesn't have time to adjust. What emerges is raw, unfiltered, true. Second, they reveal values in action, not in words. What someone does when it costs them something, what someone chooses when no one is watching, what someone becomes when the consequences are real, that matters infinitely more than what they say when it's easy. Words are cheap. Words are performance. Action is truth. Third, they show integration. Someone who is consistently kind and genuine across all situations, whether they're stressed or comfortable, whether they're with the powerful or the powerless, whether they're being observed or acting in secret, that's someone who has done genuine, painful inner work. They've descended into their own darkness. They've looked at their shadow without flinching. They've acknowledged it. They've accepted it. They've integrated it into their conscious understanding of who they are. And paradoxically, counterintuitively, against everything our culture teaches us, that makes them more trustworthy, more authentic, more whole, more human. Because they're not at war with themselves anymore. They're not hiding from half of what they are. They're not performing purity while their darkness grows in the basement of their psyche. They've made peace with the monster within, and that peace shows in everything they do. Jung once said something that changed everything for those who truly heard it. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Stop and think about what that means. Really think about it. When you've examined your own shadow, when you've descended into your own depths, when you've admitted your own capacity for selfishness and cruelty and cowardice and deception, you become immune to the performances of others. You recognize the game because you played it yourself. You see the mask because you've worn one too. You know the lies because you've told them. You understand the manipulation because you've done it. Not to judge, not to condemn, but to see clearly. This isn't about becoming cynical. This isn't about losing faith in humanity. This isn't about assuming everyone is terrible. It's about seeing people as they are, not as they claim to be. It's about protecting yourself from deception. It's about investing your trust in those who have earned it, not those who have simply performed convincingly. It's about giving your energy, your time, your love to people who are real, not to people who are still strangers to themselves. But here's Jung's warning, and you need to hear this because it's important, because it's the difference between wisdom and cruelty. Not everyone who fails these tests is irredeemable. Not everyone who shows you their shadow in these moments is beyond transformation. Some people are just asleep. They haven't woken up to their own nature yet. They haven't done the work. They haven't looked in the mirror that shows them who they really are. And maybe one day they will. Maybe one day something will break them open and force them to look. Maybe one day they'll be ready to face what they've been running from. Transformation is always possible. Always. That's the mercy in Jung's teaching. The person who treats the waiter with contempt today might be the person who becomes a champion of human dignity tomorrow. The person who falls apart under pressure might be the person who learns to integrate their shadow and becomes unshakable. The person wearing the thickest mask might be the person who finally has the courage to take it off. But for your own well-being, for your own sanity, for your own survival, choose your closest relationships, your deepest bonds, your most intimate connections with those who have already begun the journey, with those who know themselves, shadow and all. The mask always slips, always. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Watch for these two moments, stress and powerlessness. The moment when control dissolves and the moment when there's nothing to gain. They'll tell you everything you need to know about who someone really is, beneath the performance. Jung spent his entire life teaching us that the unconscious always finds a way to express itself. The shadow cannot be suppressed forever. It cannot be buried deep enough. It cannot be denied into non-existence. It will emerge in a moment of pressure when the conscious mind loses control. It will reveal itself in how we treat those we think don't matter. It will show itself in the spaces between our carefully chosen words. It will appear in our eyes before we remember to smile. The question isn't whether it will reveal itself. The question is whether you're paying attention when it does. The question is whether you're brave enough to see what's actually there instead of what you want to see. The question is whether you've looked at your own shadow long enough to recognize it in others. Because here's the final, brutal truth Jung left us with. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. If you refuse to look at your own darkness, you'll be blind to the darkness in others until it destroys you. But if you have the courage to descend into your own depths, to face what lives in your own shadow, to integrate what you've been denying, then you'll see clearly. You'll see through every mask. You'll see past every performance. You'll see the truth that everyone else is desperate to hide. And that clarity, that brutal, uncomfortable, liberating clarity, that's freedom. If this unsettled you, if this made you uncomfortable, if this forced you to think about things you'd rather not think about, then it worked. Subscribe if you want more truths that most people spend their lives avoiding. Comment and tell me, have you seen someone's mask slip? What did you see when it fell? Were you ready for the truth underneath? And remember Jung's most important teaching. The first step to seeing others clearly is to know yourself first. All of yourself, not just the parts you like, not just the parts that are acceptable, not just the parts you show the world. Face your shadow. Acknowledge what you've been denying. Integrate what you've been repressing. It's the only way to be free. It's the only way to be whole. It's the only way to see the truth.